Let's go. Today's the day. We're heading up to Cherokee tonight for the World Series of Poker Circuit. Playing our first event tomorrow morning, the $400 750k guarantee multi-flight. I have bagged this event before, made day two. It's a tough structure. Only 5% of the field makes day two. So let's just say 1,000 people enter, only 50 people are going to advance. From my memory, when I made day two, it was about 150 people returning, playing down to a winner for about 130,000. Let's hope we could bag heaps this time. Go into day two with some momentum and some confidence, and let's win this thing. Let's go. All right, today's the day we head to Cherokee. Here's the setup. Here's the dog. Come up. Come up. Gonna do some review and Poker Tracker, go through my biggest pots lost in the last month. 100 pages here, just kind of review everything we've been working on. Make sure my head's in a good place going to Cherokee. Real excited. Had some deep runs there. Haven't really broke through a Cherokee. I do have a final table in the nightly, but we're looking for a final table in a ring event. I'm feeling more confident than ever. She's not happy because she's not coming with me, but you know, that's how that goes. But yeah, feeling good. Ready for a big weekend. Coming in feeling prepared. My biggest leak historically when it comes to live poker is I always just bag 10 to 20 big blinds for day twos. And this comes down to just playing overall too passively at the end of day ones, just shying up, passing on spots, missing little spots, not bluffing enough. And this is all stuff I've been working on with my coach, and I'm really excited to execute on this trip. I'm planning on playing very fearlessly. If I know it's the right move, I'm not shying away, and hopefully this pays off and we have a great result. You know, I'm not gonna say plans to win a ring because that's, you know, results oriented. The only thing I can do is control what I can control. And that's working on my game, coming in with a clear mindset, a proper bankroll, selling action, whatnot. Yeah, we're gonna have a good mental attitude and I'm excited. Let's get it. So now I'm just doing a little studying, going through my coaching notes, also reviewing some pots and Poker Tracker, just some of the biggest pots I've lost recently. And what we could do is control all, filter it by chips lost, replay all hands and report, maximize this. And then I'm also gonna pull up GTO Wizard, pop this over to the left, and then just kind of go through here, look at my biggest pots I've lost recently. Did I make a mistake? Did I play it well? If I played it well, no big deal. If I made a mistake, how can I improve in the future? And we're just gonna kind of repeat this process for the next couple hours while we're getting ready to go to Cherokee. What's going on, guys? We're in beautiful Cherokee, North Carolina, here for the weekend to play the World Series of Poker Circuit Series. Gonna do my best to build some stacks, avoid some landmines, and let's go. This is one of the first hands I played in the $400 750k guaranteed 2-day ring event. The blinds are 200, 400, 400, and I'm 22,000 effective with the main villain in this hand. I open queen 10 of spades from under the gun, the button flats, the small blind flats, and the big blind folds. I check, the button bet's 2,500, which is roughly 75% pot, the small blind folds, and I call. I debated check raising, but check call is the standard line versus a bigger sizing, and especially versus aggressive players so we could let them keep hanging themselves. Check raise is a decent consideration versus passive players that won't barrel off often enough, so I could have gone either way here. The turn's the king of spades, I pick up a backdoor flush draw, the pot's 8,200, I check, the button checks. The river is a 2 of diamonds, which is just a complete blank at this point. I have the dealer spread the pot a bit, and ultimately bet 1 5k chip, hoping to get a call from one pair hands. And the button snap calls queens. I didn't exactly put this in his range pre-flop. I guess it's reasonable versus an under the gun open this deep, but I expected him to still 3-bet the top of his range, and I ultimately should have got a bit greedier and should have sized up more here. It's now the last level of late registration, and I've managed to chip up to 35,000 from a 20,000 chip starting stack, mostly playing small pots in position. Under the gun opens to 2,500 off a 15k starting stack, so 15 big blinds, and I'm next to act with 35 big blinds and pocket sevens, 9-handed. This is a fold in theory. However, under the gun was Daniel Lowry, the recent 10K seniors champ at the Win. He has 15 circuit rings, was running an 80% VPIP, and just wasn't afraid to get his chips in. He was absolutely mashing. So my thought was he was going to barrel me off. I wasn't deep enough to set mine. There was too many players left behind to ever be flatting here. So I ultimately just folded, which is correct in theory. But because he's opening so wide and because he's playing so aggressively, and because I saw him showdown 6-3 offsuit under the gun after flatting a 3-bet, I need to be expanding my 3-bet for value range here. And the best play after discussing this with my coach, Ian Matakis, is we need to be 3-bet getting it in here for such a wide range. And this makes a lot of sense. You're not going to see this in any chart, but this is the proper adjustment in this spot, and I missed it. Late registration's officially closed at this point, and I'm still hovering around the 30,000 chip mark. The blinds are 1,000, 2,000, 2,000, and Hijack Old Man Coffee in his 50s or 60s opens to 4,500. He'd been running a really high VPIP at this point, probably 50, 60%, limping a ton, raising a ton, just gave the overall impression that he didn't like to fold. So this was likely a very wide range. Young kid in his 20s flats the button, who is also playing very loose pre-flop, and I look down at pocket sevens in the small blind, which is considered the Cherokee nuts, and I go all in for 29,000, and I'm called by both players. So we're 3 ways to a flop. There's 92,000 in the pot. Flop comes 10-6-5 rainbow, goes check check, turn brings a 9 and a backdoor spade draw. The button bets 15,000, hijack calls, so now the pot's 122,000 with 92,000 in the side pot. I'm not feeling so good at this point. River's a blank 3, hijack checks, button bets 25,000 and the hijack snap folds. Button announced ace high and shows a missed flush draw ace jack of spades, and somehow I take down the pot for 92,000, and we're very healthy going into the bubble. The very next hand after we tripled up with the Cherokee nuts, aka pocket sevens, the blinds are still 1,000, 2,000, 2,000, and the same Old Man Coffee opens the low jack to 4,000, and he's sitting on around 200,000 at this point. I flat the button with 10-9 of diamonds and the big blind defends. There's 15,000 chips in the pot, and the flop comes ace-7 2 diamonds. Old Man Coffee c-bets 7,000. I call and the big blind folds. The turn's a blank 6 and Old Man Coffee slows down by checking. I considered betting here when check 2, but I also don't want to bet fold this much equity in position, so I ultimately elected to check behind, and after talking with my coach, he agreed with my decision. The river's a 5 of diamonds, bringing in our flush, and Old Man Coffee quickly bets 13,000 into 29,000. I had the dealer spread the pot a bit, trying to figure out how much was in the pot and how much I could raise and still get called by an ace. I ultimately raised to 30,000, which was slightly less than 3x his bet size. But after talking with my coach, he said I should have got greedier in this spot and made it 63,000. That way Old Man Coffee could easily just flick in 2 25k chips, which is a bit of a metagame compared to having to count out an exact call. Also, when they're playing against young kids who they perceive to be bluffing too much, they tend to get a bit too stubborn with ace-x, etc. So even though he ended up folding, I definitely made a mistake in this spot not sizing up more. We're in the money at this point, and out of 778 entries or re-entries, there's only 87 players remaining and 40 advanced to day 2. We're at the 2.5k, 5k, 5k big blind level. Under the gun opens to 12,000. Under the gun 1 flats. I'm in the cutoff and look down at ace queen suited with 10 big blinds or 50,000 chips. I have a standard all in. The original raiser folds, which is a good sign. The flatter tanks for a bit. Says, I'll gamble with you. Flips over king queen suited. We're in a great spot. We have him dominated. Flop comes 2 spades. He is the king queen of spades. Not a great start, but the turn's a brick. And unfortunately, the river's an offsuit king, and we're dusted. All right, we min cashed bullet number 1 in event number 2, the 750k guarantee. I was originally planning to play the afternoon flight, but I changed my mind. There's only an hour left of late registration. Hadn't eaten yet, so just got some food, came back to the room. We're out, but not the worst. Can't complain, cashing bullet number 1. We're gonna fire again in the morning. We might play the nightly tonight. Might play some sit and goes, we'll see. It's still pretty early, it's only like 8 o'clock. I just ate, just showered, so probably head back there, see what's going on. Bullet number 2 got off to a pretty rocky start, but eventually at the 501k 1k big blind level, early position min raises to 2,000, and I look down at ace queen suited in the cutoff with 12 big blinds. I shove all in, the big blind Old Man Coffee comes over the top, and early position tanks forever. Eventually he folds and we get it all in versus ace jack, for which was an amazing spot. Can we get redemption with ace queen? Nope, just a jack on the flop.
but a 10 on the turn to give us a straight, and we hold. Early position who tank folded tells us he had pocket 10s and he was audibly calling for no board pair on the river. There's only 8 minutes left to re-enter, and I'm starting to chip down from my 20,000 chip starting stack, and I'm currently sitting on 14 big blinds. Under the gun min raises to 2,000, and it folds around to me in the cutoff, and I look down at ace king offsuit. If I had ace king suited, I could maybe consider a small 3-bet non-all-in to induce, but with ace king offsuit, I'm just going to want to shove all in myself. The button folds, the blinds fold, and under the gun snap calls me with queens, and we're off to a huge race. Fortunately for us, we flop an ace and turn him dead with another ace, since his straight outs now give me a boat, and we officially have a decent stack going into the end of late reg. Late registration just closed in event number 2, and I'm on my second and final bullet. Blinds are 1k, 1.5k, 1.5k, and early position min raises to 3,000 off a roughly 50,000 chip stack. This was Dale Roselle, who's a really solid regular who travels playing poker tournaments a bunch. He just recently had a score of over $600,000 at the win, and he also finished runner-up at the WSOP Circuit main event in Tunica. My strategy here, from the low jack, 20 big blinds effective, is going to be split between a flat and a 3-bet non-all-in. Flatting becomes preferred if we think early position's too tight, and it also becomes a higher EV play if the stacks to our left are squeezing a bunch, but that really wasn't the case here. At this specific table, the players to my right were really strong, and the players to my left were a bit weaker, so my strategy here specifically versus Dale was to 3-bet non-all-in, with the plan of calling a 4-bet shove, because I think he has enough raise folds in his range, and he should also be 4-betting wide enough for value. I think he'll 4-bet shove 10s. I think he'll 4-bet shove ace jack suited. I think he'll 4-bet shove potentially even ace 5 suited, whereas general population isn't going to be 4-bet shoving that wide. I ultimately elect a 3-bet non-all-in to 8,000. Action folds around to the big blind, who's a middle-aged white guy that covers both of us. He doesn't even think about it, doesn't ask the dealer for a count, and just immediately moves all in. Dale snap folds, and I have a very annoying decision. When you realistically think about the big blind's range here, it should be something close to jacks plus ace king, and ace queen suited performs horribly against that range. I was going to call Dale for sure, but I have very little choice but to fold here. Blinds are now up to 1,000, 2,000, 2,000, and I've chipped up to 42,000 chips, which is just over 20 big blinds. Hijack, who's a good regular from my local game, min raises to 4,000, and I expect him to have enough raise folds here and not just be top of his range when he's opening off this stack size. I look down at pocket 8s on the button, which is a standard shove, but if I was a bit deeper, I could definitely be flatting here. Unfortunately for us, the big blind wakes up and goes all in over the top. Hijack folds what he later told me was pocket 7s, and we're at risk against pocket jacks for a nearly 100,000 chip pot. Can we get there? Wah, wah. I decided to try my luck in the $400 150k guaranteed one-day ring event, but ultimately I got off to a pretty slow start and couldn't find much momentum early. Eventually the button, who was an older gentleman playing pretty snug, makes it 3x at the 1k big blind level. The small blind folds and I have roughly 10,000 chips in the big blind. I look down at pocket 10s and my only move's to shove all in. He snap calls, turns over ace queen suited, and we're off to a huge flip. Ayah, queen on the flop, but a 10 on the turn. Let's go, much needed double up. My table breaks, and shortly after at the 1.5k, 3k, 3k level, cutoff limps for 3,000. The button goes all in for 19,000. I'm in the small blind with ace 10, and I'm not exactly sure what to do. I know the limper from the cutoff's basically dead money, and it's more so the big blind to my left who covers me I'm a bit worried about. It was Gabe Ramos, who is a local reg from North Carolina. He gave me a bit of a tell, which ultimately led me to go all in. He was motioning to fold even though I still had cards. I think the dealer even needed to tell him that it wasn't his turn. He was basically telling me he was out of the hand. He wasn't paying attention whatsoever, and his cards were already halfway in the muck, so I figured he was dead money, the cutoff who limped is dead money. With all the dead money already in the middle, and the fact that the all-in from the bunt was only for 19,000 chips, I figured I'm getting a really good price here, and God forbid I'm wrong and lose, I'll still have a playable stack behind. But because Gabe Ramos on my left motioned to fold prematurely, and the fact that the cutoff limping almost certainly is a capped range, I elect to go all in over the top. I secure the 2 folds I was hoping for, but unfortunately I run into pocket 10s, which is one of the worst hands imaginable. But fortunately we spike an ace on the flop, and because I have a 10 in my hand, he's left drawing to 1 out. Let's go. As you could see, things happened very quickly in poker tournaments, and I went from gaining momentum to losing it in just 2 hands. Shortly after I open ace-king offsuit, get multiple flatters, and have to fold on an unfavorable flop multi-way. Next thing you know, I get short again down to 35,000 chips at the 3K big blind level. I'm in the small blind with 6-5 suited and have a standard shove blind versus Gabe Ramos, who kind of slow rolls me a bit. He turns over a king, kind of giving me the impression that we're going to sweat this one out together, but he doesn't speak a word. Eventually flips over the other king. We're up against pocket kings. He can't get his chips in fast enough. He even flops top set. Ugh. But we flop middle pair and a backdoor flush draw. We even turn the backdoor flush draw. Is there hope? Nope, just quads on the river. Overall, this was a really great trip. Definitely learned a lot, felt more confident than I have in the past. I was able to implement a bunch of the stuff I've been working on with my coach. I was building stacks up effortlessly. I was chipping up without all-in confrontations. It was very rare I was all in for my tournament life. Very often I covered people because of small spots I was taking earlier on. I wasn't shying away from big spots like I have in the past. Definitely a great learning experience, something to build on. I wrote down basically every big pot I played and the plans to go over those with my coach, figure out where I played well, where I made mistakes, where I could have done better, where I could have potentially got more value, where maybe I overfolded certain spots. So just keep working on those, keep building, and the goal is to have more success in the future. I'm primarily an online player. I have hundreds of thousands of hands in my poker tracker. I don't get to play live a ton, but the plan is to play more live moving forward, especially with my main event goal. Started with $0, currently building that up as much as possible, just taking profits from online tournaments. I had a local win and a local tournament for $1,700, used a chunk of that, put into this account. I have friends and family who are willing to invest. So slowly but surely, the main event dream is coming real. Cherokee definitely helped in that goal. I entered the multi-flight, cashed my first bullet for $626, played again the next day, didn't cash. And then I also played the one-day event, 150k guaranteed ring event. Came close to cashing that one, but ultimately soft bubbled. I did sell action though. I sold 45% of the $1,200 in tournaments I played. I was in for $1,200 in tournaments and cashed for $626, netting me a loss of $574. I sold 45% of my action, however, so I only really lost $315.70. And then I played a satellite, which I had 100% of myself, which was a survivor tournament. It was a cash survivor. You buy in for $100. They paid 1 in 8 people. Effectively, they raked 20%. They took 2 seats as rake and then paid 1 in 8 people $800 on their $100 investment. So basically, if you survive into the top 14, you are guaranteed to 8x your money. I was lucky enough to be one of the survivors. We started with 10,000 chips. I ended with almost 100,000 chips. The blind levels went up every 10 minutes. It was a super turbo structure. But this was on my last day in Cherokee. I was able to win that for a $700 profit and end the trip with a profit of $384.30. So can't complain. Was able to save my trip. Had I done a little better in my high equity all-in spots, the trip could have gone a lot better. My main goal is to keep improving at poker. And for starters, I'll be reviewing all my biggest pots played from this past weekend with my coach. I plan to continue to work extremely hard on my game, and ideally will have better results at the next Cherokee stop. They come back in April, August, and November, so there'll be plenty of opportunities in the future. This is the most local stop for me, so I'll definitely be back as much as possible. Next time I might play a better structure. I usually play this huge multi-flight, which is a bit of a minefield. Might come back and play the 6 max next time, maybe the main event, sell some action, or try to satellite in. Just a quick update on the $10,000 main event savings goal. Previously updated on Twitter that we were at around $600. Most recently, after Cherokee, I got up to as high as $1,100. And then my buddy Justin, who I saw in Cherokee, said he wanted to take 5%, and he sent that over, deposited that money, and now we're at $1,600, ladies and gentlemen. We also had Benz commit $1,000 for 5%, which is awesome. I officially have 10% sold. I have 90% of myself as we speak. The goal is to save as much money as possible so I can ideally keep more than 50% of my own action. I don't really plan on selling any more action until at least June, but let's just say I have $6,000 saved up come June, plus $1,000 from Benz and $500 from my friend Justin. I'd have $7,500 at that point, and I'd likely sell 30-40% of my action. Keep up with these vlogs and also follow me on Twitter if you want to follow the main event goal. I'll be posting updates on where I'm at in the challenge, what the current account balance is, what tournaments I'm playing, as well as any poker-related successes I've been having. Right now, I've won 5 tournaments on the year, 3 online, 1 at my local game, and then if you count the Survivor tournament at Cherokee, that's also 1. Not necessarily an outright win, but I do have 4 outright wins on the year, which has been great. Stay tuned for more vlogs. I plan on putting out a bunch of content between now and the main event, and thank you all for watching.